Hello, Michelle from Holistic Pillars, and welcome back. I have Rob Hart with me again for part 3 of our wellness chats. Hi, Rob. Thanks for coming.
Hello, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
For those who haven't seen part 1 and 2, I'd just like to introduce Rob. He has 20 plus years in the corporate world and globally. He has a background in wellbeing, human performance, and psychology. He's the founder of Zest Learning, and most recently, in the last probably 18 months, been at AGL running a health and wellbeing program for our COVID and our current situation, which is where we've come across each other. So thanks heaps for joining me, Rob. I would like to know a little bit about you, a little bit of background for everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, and for those out there, thanks for joining as well. It's a real lovely opportunity to work with you all out there. My background, I studied at Loughborough University in the UK, which is known globally as sort of Team GB's Olympic headquarters, and we work with they work with lots of sports teams in the elite level and help provide some good sports science to everything from Olympians to soccer players to cricket, tennis and beyond for all different manner of countries and levels. So that got me an interest in human performance. And I like to see this, what I call a human supply chain of how do we create building blocks for sustainable energy, good mental health and everything else. And it got me into working in corporate. I worked for some consultancy firms for a while and then joined the energy giant Shell back in the UK and the Netherlands back in the early noughties and worked for them for a number of years, moved over here eventually in Australia and saw that there's a big impact. My role was in learning and development. And I saw that there's a real hunger for people to learn techniques about how they could improve their energy levels throughout the day and how they could manage their mental health and their emotions when they don't get what they need or they're going through a change program. So it got me really inspired to set up Zest Learning 10 years ago and consult to a range of corporates from FIFO workers working in the mines to oil and gas producers to more green energy to banking, finance, not-for-profits, and really just because we're at work 8 to 9 hours a day, it does tend to be the place where we spend a lot of our energy. And I wanted to make that road supportive for people. Hence why I've got a little bit of time now in-house at AGL helping manage folks through the pandemic and lockdown with some useful resources around all those aspects I've just shared. So yeah, it's a great place to be and a real, I have to say, responsibility, but also really enjoyable. So we're trying to make some differences where we can.
Right, and you're making a big difference. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
We've already done a couple of chats and we've talked about sleep science and some tips there on bettering the sleep. We've recently, I've gone blank now.
Looking at mindfulness.
Mindfulness, of course. See?
That's all right.
Some mindfulness techniques. And now we're going to talk about all-day energy. And this is something that is very close to you. So let's talk about that.
Sounds good. Now, I think we can probably start with all-day energy around a quick question to everyone out there. Michelle, would you like more energy in the day, even though you are a very energetic person, but would you want more energy? You know,
always looking for more energy. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To me, this is the difference I see in 10 years ago when I first began in quite a niche area where back in the day, resilience was a big thing and it had a moment. I think it's had its day, frankly. People are cynical over the word resilience these days now because what it's doing is it's putting the responsibility on the individual despite all the horrendous stuff that goes on sometimes when we're going through lockdown, change, greater responsibilities, doing more at work with less people. And when I hear companies saying, hey, we want to get our staff some resilience training because we're about to make a big restructure and everyone's going to be doing more work, I kind of go, actually, no, that's not what you need at all. You need to look at the culture you're creating and why people want to work for you and why they should care about being more resilient. So it's controversial and that will ruffle a few feathers with that statement alone, as I found it did when I joined this particular organization I'm with, but people saw the benefits. Building energy isn't just about having more of it. It's sustainably releasing it throughout the day so that you don't just go full pelt Monday to Wednesday and then by Thursday, Friday, you're starting to wane. And by the weekend, when all the fun stuff happens at home, you've got nothing in the tank. So have you seen that over the time that you work with people in your life, Michelle, that you can have a good start to the week and get warmed up by Wednesday and by Friday, everyone's like, oh. Do you see that sometimes?
Absolutely.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So let's have a look. Physical vitality, mental fitness, emotional agility. We'll begin with 3, and I'll talk to you right at the end about the 4th one that's a bit more beyond the pale. These 3 things, picture them as plates spinning on a pole. We've got to try and keep them all in equilibrium so that one doesn't fall. Now, we'll begin with looking at physical vitality in a moment, but I want you to think of some very good principles about building energy. It's a balance, quite frankly, if I do a graph here, between capacity versus demand. Now, capacity are all the things that come towards us in a day, our work hours, the tasks we deal with at work, the family challenges we might be facing at home, the leisure and social activities, our relationships, our children, if we have them, our pets, if we have them, all these things we're trying to juggle at once, right? And can I ask you, Michelle, as life's gone on, has capacity gone up for you as it has for me? Have you seen demand go up for you over the years, since the last 10 years or so?
Definitely.
Yeah. So capacity is going up, but none of us is getting any younger. And so that demand's increasing. So we've got to have the capacity to meet that demand. And as we get older, we typically have a bit less energy. And I'm going to challenge everyone out there to think of the balance between capacity and demand is how we manage our energy. So if we've got more demand on us and we have capacity for it, capacity is our fuel tank. And those fuel tanks are emotional, physical, and mental. We've got to keep them topped up. So my big challenge to everyone out there is to change the way you think about how you manage your energy. So how many hours are there? The question a bit arithmetic for you out there. I know the answer, so I won't put Michelle on the spot, but what's the total number of hours you've got in a week? 7 times 24 is the number. I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. So everyone out there, have a quick think. 7 times 24 is 168. You've never got more or less than 168 hours, all right? 7 times 24. You never got more or less than that. Now, time disappears. The minute we've just spoken is gone forever. Can't get it back. But energy, however, is something you can renew. You can't renew time, but you can renew energy. So the challenge here is manage your energy, not your time. Manage your energy, not your time. That's a completely different shift of paradigm from what we've been told through the 90s and noughties and beyond. Everything was obsessed about managing time. You've only got 168 hours. Take away 49 hours from that for sleep. I think that makes about 119 hours. That's how many hours of sleep you need if you've seen episode 1 of this trio. That's how many hours you need. So you've got those with 119 hours. Take away 7 more hours for physical movement. You should be moving around an hour a day, ideally, with exercise. That leaves you only 112 hours. Doesn't sound like much, does it? To get all that stuff done. So we've got to manage our time. Does that sound like a scary number to you, Michelle? 112 hours?
It does.
Not great, is it?
No.
So let's look first of all at chaptering our day. Now, I talked about this in the earlier session, but I think it's good for everyone to hear out there. One of the best things you can do is consciously make a starting point. When you begin your day and you sit and you open your first application on your computer, 90 minutes. Set your Fitbit, your watch, or whatever it is, or phone to buzz you every 90 minutes. Take a stretch break. Look away from the screen. Stand up. Move. Glass of water. Take some deep breaths. 4 in. Hold for 2. Slowly exhale for 6. And try and make that break between 90 seconds to 3 minutes. Because what you're doing is recalibrating. Every 90 minutes, we have something called the ultradian rhythm. It peaks and drops, peaks and drops. How do you feel, Michelle, when you've done back-to-back MS team meetings all day? Like if you've been, and it's not something you're particularly that interested in. Let's say it's a really detailed, quite dry meeting. What does that, by lunchtime, how are you feeling if you've just gone back to work?
You're drained.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, and we get to 2 o'clock and we're in that natural ultradian slump, and we might be craving a bit of chocolate, maybe have dehydrated because we've been not really paying attention to our hydration. So every 90 minutes, can I implore everyone out there to check in on 3 things? Go, right, how's my energy level physically? How am I feeling? Do I need a bit of hydration? Do I need a stretch? Do I need a healthy snack? Perhaps my appetite's waning. Do I need to check in with my thoughts? Is my brain a little bit overwhelmed? And how's my concentration levels? So let's take it, we call that ritualizing renewal. Now, if you're interested, there's a 90-second breathing technique I gave in episode 2, which Michelle hosted, and you can go back and have a look at that. So it's a little plug to go and look at the other one. That gives you the techniques. So let's be clear on this again. Capacity v demand, managing energy, not time, bookmarking your day into 90-minute intervals. Now, the physical one's important. For those of you out there who are not fans of exercise, there's a minimum effective dose, and that's 30 minutes 3 times per week. That's got to be unbroken 30 minutes though. So that could be a brisk walk, a jog, a swim, a paddle, a cycle, whatever you like to do. And that has the same impact on your mental health as a mild antidepressant, because you're releasing a lot of good endorphins and serotonin and good things. You're getting some sunshine, hopefully, with some daylight. 30 minutes 3 times per week is the minimum effective dose. That comes from Harvard Med School study. Just some physical activity, very important. And I'm sure, you're quite regularly exercising and moving, aren't you, Michelle, during the week?
I'm daily sessions at the gym and stuff, as well as walks and stuff. Yeah, so very active.
How do you feel after the exertion? I mean, in the good side of things, what does it feel like when you've exercised, mentally and physically, perhaps?
There's no comparison. I just love the exercise, love the feeling. Yeah,
exactly.
It's more how I feel if I don't.
Yeah, right. I hope you'd say that. We notice the deficit, right? Does it affect your energy levels if you don't exercise?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a big lift. And some people in the morning love to exercise, some at lunchtime, some at night. Whatever it's doing, it's regulating the stress hormones, getting rid of those, giving it a lift, oxygenating the body. It feels great, doesn't it? And I'm so pleased you said you notice the difference when you don't do it. So you'll start to see that it becomes quite an addictive thing. You get a dopamine hit when you exercise. It makes you want more. So it keeps you coming back for more, hopefully.
Mm.
A big tip, though, is the transition now from body to brain. We create more grey matter in the prefrontal cortex, which is here, when we exercise, and it improves memory and concentration too, along with all the cardiovascular benefits of reducing inflammation, increasing lung and heart capacity, and resting pulse rate, which is a good way to kind of keep the whole system clean and running nicely. It also helps manage your appetite. When we start to exercise, do you notice an impact on the kinds of foods that you start eating, Michelle, when you start to see the benefits of physical prowess from exercise? What what sort of food choices does that drive for you when you're exercising?
I'm much cleaner in my eating because I feel fantastic, and I don't want to go and undo things by eating junk food.
Exactly. And it does create that appetite for, and we know that wholesome food, good sources of energy there. Now, there's a doctor called James Collins who's got Harley Street Clinic, and James Collins wrote a book called I think it's called The Energy Plan or The Energy Factor, something like that. And he started looking at different composition of plates of food for energy. And he talks about having a protein plate when we've exercised to build our repair of tissue and muscles, and also a recovery plate that we don't have densely high carbs when we're not so active. And his book, The Energy Plan, is worth a look at. And he talks about how we set up our plate based on the activity levels we have. Many of us have this default, let's get a breakfast in us, let's have a lunch, and let's have big dinner at night. Not always the case. You can be guided by your energy and activity levels, and that's a whole session on its own, and Michelle will take you through that in other podcasts. But have a look at James Collins' Energy Plan book. It's really good because he uses elite athletes as a study in how we can bring that into corporate life. So you may well find an interest there. I want to go to mental focus. How many of us have spent a week or a day multitasking? Do you find you ever do multitasking, Michelle? I'm not trying to catch you out here. It's not a bad thing. I just wanted to see if can you recognize that you do it?
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And probably not very well, but I do it all the time.
Yeah. So we know that multitasking. Okay, there's something we need to be aware of here. We've got three brains actually. And Professor Stephen Peters wrote a book called The Chimp Paradox. How does this relate to energy? Massively. If you put your hand on your forehead, big piece of brain behind there called the prefrontal cortex. Now take a look at the palm of your hand. That's a big surface area of brain, isn't it? That's all your rational thinking, willpower, executive thinking, analysis, what ifs, short-term memory as well. Behind that sits the limbic system. And right here in the temples, we've got our amygdala, which are about the size of 2 almonds. Professor Stephen Peters calls this the human brain, and behind it, the chimp brain. Now, why the chimp brain? Well, a chimpanzee is 3 times stronger than an adult human physically, and therefore we like to use the metaphor that this limbic system, this chimp brain, is 3 times stronger than the human brain. It's what scans the horizon for all the naughty things we shouldn't be doing, like procrastinating, distraction, impulses, wanting that extra glass of wine or chocolate, or saying something inappropriate in a meeting just to get a reaction. All these naughty things we know we shouldn't do. When we're stressed and overwhelmed, the chimp brain's let out the cage a lot more, and it's roaming the environment looking to be playful. And what it does, it derides, the amygdala switches on and completely switches off this smart brain. Now, why is that? It's too much stress, it's relentless tasks, so we become decision fatigued, and also we become, through multitasking, juicing up the cortisol and stress hormones because we're doing too much. We're not really paying attention in properly. Can I please ask you all to think about this? Choose 20 minutes out of each day to do a single task focus. So you might need to turn off the screen for a moment if you're planning a strategy and write it down, or switch off email for a moment. Don't look at your phone. There is evidence. Normally when I do a face-to-face workshop, we do a few experiments to prove it. Multitasking, if you shift it to single tasking, you will complete the task 3 times quicker, and it takes less cognitive energy for you to get that task done. How do I know that? A friend of mine wrote a book. Took him 3 years for the first one because he just did a bit of writing when he had a moment. But when he set aside an hour a day to have deep, purposeful practice of writing, he wrote that same book, which is bigger volume, in a year. And it was a more complex book to write. So just that dedicated single task focus once per day will have huge benefits for your energy mentally. Can you relate to that, Michelle? Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, I'm already starting to think of how I can do that.
Yeah.
Putting that in
Even 5 or 10 minutes is good enough.
Because I always do have my big to-do list.
Mm.
I'm trying to tick everything off.
Definitely. So there's your mental one, and having a look at that. And if you want to build up mental muscle, as we call it, have a look at the mindfulness episode that we did, because there's some little activities in there to be more engaged in how you eat, how you consume media, when you consume it, also how you sort of allocate compartmented time to look at single tasks and be present in what you're doing. And that will help lift some of that mental fog, because we do get on the process. Now, we are not meant to be computers running multiple programs, extended times, and running them all at once. We need to be able to switch off and close down sometimes. So that leads me to emotions, the final piece. Do an emotional audit a few times a day. When you're breathing, that 90 seconds breathing activity we talked about in episode 2, or just your deep breathing, in for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Check in with your thoughts. I do a little audit called catch, check, and change. Now, I've talked about this previously, but what it is, you catch your emotional state and say, God, I feel a bit wired, a bit flat, a bit angry. Check in with yourself and say, is that a good emotion to be having? As I'm about to step into a conversation with a boss, or have some compassion for a colleague who needs to talk about a personal issue or something like this. Just start to register how you're feeling. The more you call out your emotional state, the more self-aware you become, and it's probably likely to be exalted in your body language, in your pace of voice, and your attitude, and your facial expressions. I see people that go all day without really checking in with how they're going emotionally, and it builds up to a point by 4 o'clock when the IT that they're using goes wrong, and it's a bang on the table and a swear word that comes out, and everyone in the office kind of goes, and you've got this moment where suddenly you've lost control, and then that's going to have a huge impact on your emotions and take a lot of stress out of you. So emotionally, do you see days like that, Michelle? I'm sure you don't swear at your computer or anything, but do you know what I mean? Did you get sort of a bit, something might just build up in the day and you feel a bit tired from it?
Yeah,
process it?
Yeah, we just need to stop and think about that emotion. Yeah, definitely.
Because to finish with on your emotional energy, we work through 4 zones in the day. And I'd like you to think about this. There's a performance zone where you've got a nice balance of pressure and challenge. So it's something you're enjoying doing. And we call that flow in psychology. That's where you've got everything in balance. You know, you've got enough challenge, you're doing okay. Maybe you're doing something that creates meaning for you. That's called flow. And you can spend a bit of time in that. Then we've got the renewal zone. So performance zone, then renewal zone. Doesn't take much energy to be in renewal zone, but it gives you energy back. Renewal zone's going for a walk. It might be doing your exercise. It might be having a few deep breaths. And most people don't spend any time in that during the day because they just keep going all day. So trying to find a moment to be in renewal zone. Now here's the dark side. If we don't spend enough time in renewal zone, we very quickly go into what we call survival zone. Stress hormones are high, heart rate's high, tension in the body's high. We've been sat down all day. We haven't really stopped. And it starts to build up all that stress, which switches on the monkey brain or the chimp brain, and we become overwhelmed. Too long in performance zone leads us to the terrible burnout zone. And that's when we get depressed, anxious, not sleeping, tension in the body. So we've got to make sure we're moving around those 4 zones: performance zone, then renewal zone, avoiding survival zone for too long, and then not going into burnout zone. Do you know what the magic number is for that, Michelle? 20. 20%. Now, I know you get a lot of enjoyment out of working with your team and some of the things you do at AGL, and I know you love your work you do here.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask everybody on the call to think of something they really enjoy about their work, something they've got a gift with, perhaps something that they've developed, something they enjoy doing. It might just be, getting a spreadsheet to balance. It might be creating a to-do list that works. It might be ticking off some action items. That's creating meaning for you. It might be who comes to you for advice and asks you a question and you help them or coach them. That gives them a joy in you too. Spot what it is for you that's the 20%, because this is your emotional energy. If you can do something in your job each day that creates that 20% of meaning for you, it galvanizes you against energy burnout by a whopping 60%. That study comes from the Mayo Clinic, a global consortium of doctors and nurses and health practitioners who showed that in the pandemic in the front line, those health practitioners that could use their specialist skill for 20% of the time galvanized their own burnout by 60%. And that is the performance supply chain: balancing capacity and demand, managing energy, not time, ritualizing renewal, single task focus, performance zone, renewal zone, so that you don't fall into survival and burnout, and then finding your 20% of emotional engagement that keeps you buoyant and keeps you going. That creates flow for you, an optimum psychological state to be in to reduce anxiety. And there you go, bit of energy basics.
It's so good. I love it. But also then lots of meaningful practices like your mindfulness and your breathing techniques. And
yeah, definitely. And sleep. Don't forget sleep.
Loads of exercise, good sleep. They're all ways of boosting energy. Like it's again, drawing it back to holistic pillars and the 4 pillars of health. It all aligns beautifully, I think.
Doesn't it? And you see, that's the thing, when we start looking at all these things, you go, oh, it's common sense to eat well, sleep well, exercise well, and everyone goes, oh, health and well-being is a bit fluffy, isn't it? And I say, well, if it's so fluffy, why is everyone struggling with it? It's hard, it's difficult. And so if we break it down into those basics I've just shared with you there, you can cherry pick a couple of things and try them out. Progression, not perfection. That's what we're looking for here. And it's incremental gains. Little things you do each day will compound across the week. So try them out. Don't be afraid. It's just trial and error. What works for you?
I love it. I love it. And there's so much in there. I'm going to play this one back many times and put a couple of practices in place myself. But I love the reward, like doing things in your workplace that gives you great satisfaction doing those. Thanks again, Rob. And
absolute pleasure.
Topic. And I think we need to deep dive into that a little bit more because I'm sure we all need more energy and definitely need more energy and less time management, more energy management, and how we can make that better. But thanks so much for your insights again.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for all those that listened. Good to see you.
Lovely. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone out there. Nice to be here.
See ya.